Now, Pete Gleeson, welcome.
Hi, thanks Jim, good to be here.
Congratulations on your film Hotel Coolgardie.
Thank you.
Can you, in your own words, and without giving too much away, describe what Hotel Coolgardie is about?
Well, what it's about, ostensibly what it's about, is two female foreign backpackers who, having been robbed of their travel savings in Bali, rock up to Perth, having been told that you can find decent employment there, and they get sent to an outback pub to be the quote-unquote fresh meat, kind of dropped into the slaughter in this very hyper-masculine outback environment, and it's about them trying to navigate that space.
It is a remarkable documentary where we follow the journey of these two innocent, young, attractive girls from Finland who go to this pub, and they appear to go back in time. There's a sense that they are going back in time. I want to get to that in a second. The absolute first question I've got to ask, given the amount of personal revelation that occurs in this film, is how did you get all the people who appear in this film to sign the releases to allow you to use the footage or to show their faces, to show them in such an unvarnished way? Because it's a remarkable film in terms of what it shows about certain types of human behaviour. How did you get them to agree to this? When do you get them to sign?
Well, you just, whenever you can, when you're around the bar, you get people to sign. You have crowd waivers posted around the pub, and you're always telling people what you're doing there. And that's kind of 90% of our time was spent telling people what we were doing there, explaining what we were looking at. And people, this is the thing about places like this and what we were trying to do out there. We were showing what was very kind of normal and mundane in many ways out there. So a lot of people were scratching their heads saying, well, what, you're kind of making a film about nothing. This is our world. And of course, nobody really knew how it was going to unfold. So
they're signing during the process of making the film. So while you're making the film, they're signing the release. They're not waiting until they see the film at the end. They're not signing right at the beginning. So they're signing
no. They. This is the thing with filmmaking. You kind of have to go on with a sure footing. You can't kind of show something. You can't, film somebody and then ask them if they'd like to be a part of it, because there might be a whole plethora of other things that you're filming as well that you want to be able to keep. So it's about just constantly telling people what you're doing and making sure that they basically know what you're doing. So it doesn't even really come down to whether or not they sign a release form. It's just that they know and that they're aware that you're making a film and that they might be
I'll ask you frankly, has anyone objected to the film? Have any of them seen it and said, "Oh my God, that's me in a movie"? Has anyone pushed back at their
well, not yet, but it's early days though.
Yeah.
The people that have seen it are pretty complimentary about it. We've shown a couple of people. Some people don't really want to see it. Some people do.
Well, there's okay.
And though there's been a couple where we've thought, oh, I wonder how they'll react, and they've. I think most people, they see it as a film.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be an indictment or an expose as such. It's not, me going out as a journalist and saying, look what's going on in this town, like a news report. It's a film about things that are very universal. This pub is a microcosm for the rest of society, and exploring how different dynamics work. Kind of universally. So I think people who have seen it, they kind of get that, and they see it in that light.
Well, I'm hoping to get a qualification out of you about what you just said, because they do seem to go back in time. You see behaviours in this film that make you think it was made in the 70s. These people are in the 70s. There's sexism in it. The ugly Australian. The guy who owns the pub is... These are obnoxious characters, some of them. Some of them are quite sweet.
Well, yeah, seen through the eyes of the women, and that's the thing. We chose a very specific perspective, and it was a very specific place and time. And a lot of women go out there and they have a really really good time out there. They adapt and they navigate that world. And if they've especially if they've got the tools to do it, if English is their first language, if they come from a similar culture, and they're used to being able to make that those cultural norms and customs work for them,
But when you say microcosm, you're not talking about Australian society. Presumably, if these two girls got jobs working as barmaids in Double Bay or Toorak, they're not going to be treated in this way.
Maybe not, but there might be some of the same, latent expectations, but expressed in different ways. I mean, we like to, if you're kind of in a city and, you're
trendy and bohemian and liberal thinking and
you're going to look at this film and say that's outrageous. That's but if you're from these other places, a lot of these things still kind of ring true.
Well, that's the shocking thing.
And and you say it's like a relic in a way, and we designed it that way too, with the look of it, and obviously the Wake in Fright references, and I guess that's the point of the film, to kind of put it out there and say this was drawn from actuality. Is it a relic, or is it something that still resides, within the fabric of Australian society and culture? And it's brought out. It's very blatant and brashly displayed here, because everything's been stripped back. All the latent things that I wanted to explore once these girls became kind of blank canvases for the guys to project all their stuff onto, became blatant. So that's what I'm interested in, is having people look at it and say, well, is it a relic or is it not?
So let's just talk about just some of the stereotypes that are confirmed in this film, because you have the prevalence of drinking culture, and you also have the sexism, where the girls are treated quite badly, and it's quite ironic that the pub owner says, smile on your face and be pleasant and you'll get lots of tips and you'll work out fine. And then he treats them quite abusively. It's quite horrendous how he treats them. One big question to you is how does a place like that get time locked in the 21st century? Because they've got the internet. You see them on their devices. So presumably they have exposure to the rest of the world. They have exposure to movies and TV and news and all the rest of it. How does a place like that become so time locked?
Well, it's insularism, isn't it? It's if you surround yourself with people who confirm, it's confirmation bias and all that. As you surround yourself with people who reinforce the way you want to see the world, you become insular, and I think that's happening the world over. Especially in the Western world, we seem to think that I seem to think that we're probably the most enlightened we have ever been. We've got access to the most information that we've ever had. We should be the most understanding that we have ever been able to be. Yet there's these two camps between inclusiveness and intolerance and enlightenment and ignorance and progressiveness and conservativeness that seem to be getting more and more divergent. And I think people are insulating themselves more and more. And I guess that's part of what this kind of explores.
It was remarkable how the film did reveal, or it did expose, how deeply embedded certain behaviours are in certain environments. And it was, again, I think that's the big reaction that you're getting from the movie, from people who see the film, is that how can this be in the 21st century?
Yeah. And I think that the more threatened something is, the more staunchly you cling to it, and the more the more strongly you express it. And I think that's happening a lot out there as well. You know, especially in the era of Hanson. You know, the less stable an attitude or an old-fashioned notion becomes, the more stridently it seems to be expressed in a way.
No.
But it might appear as though it's becoming stronger and stronger, but I think it's an indication that it's probably not. It's probably a bit more fragile than.
Now, what
people
aren't you showing us in this film? Because we just get a glimpse of the rest of the town, but we don't really get a sense of the people who live there. There's no police presence that we really see, and there's a mention of a pool, but we don't really. It's pretty much the pub.
Yeah,
So
and
this
that
tells
was
about the approaching
fairly
talk.
deliberate. I mean,
Yeah.
we needed to stick to what the girls saw through their eyes. So Coolgardie and the Goldfields has plenty of other stuff besides the pub, and it's it's a really diverse and interesting place, and I have a great time out there when I go out there. But the world we see through the girls' eyes is very corridored. You know, they go out to this place that is in the middle of this great vastness, but they live in this claustrophobic environment, and they go out of the pub now and then, but kind of just through these corridors. And if you're from the town, you're probably saying to yourself, why don't they go here or there and explore a bit more? But that's where they went, and I think once they got there and they had this kind of jolt. Where they realised that they had to, they were dependent upon kind of everybody else in the bar for their experiences. There was this kind of question of, okay, what do I need if I want to go out and go hunting, or if I want to go and go to the next town? What do I need to kind of sacrifice or compromise in order to do that? So they kind of retracted and became insular themselves in a way, and that was and then people reacted even more strongly to that.
Did you use any particular technique to get that fly on the wall feel?
We've filmed for a couple of weeks before they arrived, but there's a lot of weird and wonderful shit goes on out in these pubs. So a guy with a camera is not that unusual. I might be a guy with a camera, but coming in behind me, there might be a guy with a kangaroo over his shoulder, or a piece of gold in his hat, or there's a whole bunch of amazing things that go on. So a guy with in the bar with a camera for a few weeks, it wasn't that much of it wasn't that remarkable for them. But it was a case of just being there a lot, making sure that you were talking to people a lot, and the people who form our main characters are people who had a lot of exposure to the bar and to the women behind the bar. So it wasn't filming people as they came in the door, because obviously they'd look at the camera and want to know what was happening and show off for a little while. And
how did you come across the story?
I had worked out there very briefly for a time many years ago.
Doing what?
Helping a guy dismantle old mine sites. So I discovered the pub, I got to know the publican, I would drop in there every now and then and just notice the cycle of bar girls. And that happens in pubs all across the country, where people come for 2 or 3 months, earn some money, move on. And I just thought it was fertile ground for a documentary. I didn't know what form it would take, but I knew if I picked up a camera in this place, there would be interesting things happening.
And what's the life of the film?
The life of the film so far, we've just finished about a year of festival screenings. It's had a great festival run. It premiered at Hot Docs in Toronto, and then nationally at the Sydney Film Festival last year, and went to Slam Dance. So that's just slowly been building momentum. It was a fairly low-key, low-budget production initially, so that's just built momentum, and eventually it's built up a bit of a name for itself, and now we're lucky enough to have a national theatrical release from the 15th. It will be in cinemas around the country, and then we'll see where it goes from there. You know, it's a universal story. People that have watched it in Canada or in the States or anywhere else, you know, they're you know, we often have people come up and say, you know, that happened. You know, that's my experience as well. I've worked in a pub out in you know, Ontario, and it's just like that. So it's not that it's a very Australian film, and it's very recognisable, but it has, you know, it's a universally themed film.